Good morning, sir. Good morning, classmates. My task for today is to report about lobster. So, taxonomical classification. Kingdom Animalia, phylum Arthropoda, subphylum Crustacea, class Malacostraca, order Decapoda or 10 legs, and family Nephropidae. So lobsters are classified in the phylum Arthropoda. The word Arthropoda comes from the Latin word arthro meaning jointed and the Greek word poda meaning foot. So lobsters are also decapods. Deca being Greek for 10. So it has 10 legs or have a 5 pairs. So the lobster is a large, bottom-dwelling marine crustacean that belong to the phylum Arthropoda. Lobsters have a long, segmented exoskeleton that is made of chitin and a long, muscular tail. True lobsters have three pairs of pincers or chelae that are used for catching prey and for defense. So the chelae is usually larger on one side than the other. Lobsters have long antennae and several swimming legs that are located on their abdomen. They also have compound excess that are on movable stalks. So lobsters are typically blue or green in color. Why? Because they can blend in with the ocean floor. So characteristics. Lobsters are invertebrates with a hard protective exoskeleton. Three of their five pairs of legs have claws, enclosing the first pair, which are generally much larger than the others. One of their front claws is known as crusher, and the other one is known as pincher. So they have a cephalothorax where the head and thorax are located, covered both by an exoskeleton shell, the abdomen being the other part of their anatomy. Their antennae, jaws, first and second jaws, and the first, second, and third maxillipedes are located in their head. So there are six types of lobsters. So the first one is the clawed lobsters or Nephrophidae dana. So it is the most common kind and it is the one that comes to mind first. So they have three pairs of claws out of their total five pairs of limbs. So these lobsters are especially important for the fishing industry since they are the most widely consumed ones. And they are the one you expect to be served on a platter where you order in a fancy restaurant. So next is the reef lobsters or Enoplimotophus holthuis. So these lobsters only have one large set of claws on the first one. So they are strikingly colored with some even sporting purple or lavender markings. So reef lobsters are also a clawed variety. They are different from clawed lobsters. So instead of having claws on three limbs. So the next one is the spiny lobsters or Palinuridae latriale. So these crustaceans are nocturnal in nature and feed on algae, snails, crabs, and other small creatures that dwell on the bottom of the ocean floor. If they are present, it means that the ecology around them is sure to be healthy and diverse. So spiny lobsters, these crustaceans are easily recognizable because of their variety thick and oversized antennae. And this is where the word spiny comes from. So the next is the sleeper lobsters or Cyclarides latus. So in sleeper lobsters, the front claws are lacking while the antennae are enlarged. So these lobsters hide under the mud during daytime instead of lounging in crevices like others. So sleeper lobsters, because of this quality, they are not favored much as food. So the next one is the fiery lobsters or Phalibitus magnificus. These lobsters have large antennae but are small themselves, which makes them stealthy and so they are able to evade most lobsters' traps. So fiery lobsters is one of the main characteristics that give fiery lobsters is their name is the hair-like protrusions on their bodies that look like actual hair from a distance. So squat lobsters. Squat lobsters or Immunida picta. Squat lobsters belong to the phylum Arthropoda. The majority of squat lobsters are found in deeper waters and have very long claws that can be twice as long as their bodies. So squat lobsters generally eat small marine worms or crustaceans or scavenge on dead animals. So what makes them especially interesting is the variety and diversity it shows in its coloring. So ecology. Lobsters live in burrows. They dig in rocks or among sea grasses. In order to grow, lobsters have to shed their shells multiple times in a lifetime as they go through growth spurts. So, burrow means a hole or excavation in the ground made by an animal for shelter and habitation. So, they are the most active at night. During the day, they typically hide in burrows or cavities in rock piles, which they enter in backing in. Lobsters can crawl in all directions, but when they are foraging, they mostly proceed in a forward directions. Smaller lobsters can swim jerkily by rapidly backflipping their tail fan. Distribution. According to the FIDICOOP, or Regional Federation of Cooperative Societies of the Baja California Fisheries Industry, FCL, lobsters hunting has an annual average of 1,400 tons. Most of the export is sent Asia. A small amount is sent to market in France and the United States. Only 10% of the total catch is sold locally in the Gulf of Mexico. So feeding habits. The main diet of a lobster is crab, mussels, clams, starfish, sea urchins, and various marine worms. They are also known to catch fast-moving animals like shrimp. So, even other lobsters, ilahang unayon og kaon usahay. So, ilahang baba located below the cephalothorax, which is in the middle of the antennae. So, naa sila'y jaws nga mao'y silbing gamiton as their feet to make a first chewing. Ang pagkaon madung sa ilahang first stomach. After this, they reach the second stomach, called pyloric, where they finally pass into the intestine. So some some lobsters also called like a cockroaches because they can also eat the waste of other animals as well as dead fish in the depths of the sea. So if after traveling around some distance, if they don't find their food, they dig in the surrounding areas in search of clams, algae, and small fish that live among the algae. So lobsters also are fervent hunters of slower species like snails, to which they break the shell with a single blow using their claws. So they can also eat crabs if they get them. What most highlights of the lobsters is their huge adaptability of different environments and food, surviving even in captivity. So let's go to the lobster life cycle. An adult lobster can lay up to 100,000 eggs, depending on the size of the female. So the female carries her fertilized eggs externally under her tail, attached to her somerits for a period of 9 to 12 months. So at this point, her eggs are the size of a grain of rice, dark green in color, and have an irregular shape. So, sorry, dili dark green colors ako ang eggs akong lobster kay wa ko kakita sa internet. Orange na jud ang mogawas. So after hatching, pre-larvae are attached to the female. So they molt shortly thereafter. On the stage 1, larvae are released and swim into the water column to within a few centimeters of the surface. And this is where stage 1 of the planktonic larval phase begins. So the larvae are somewhat protected from predators because they are transparent in color and about the size of a pea. So in stage 2 and 3 of the planktonic larva phase, the lobster is about the size of a thumbnail. At stage 3, larvae have a fully developed tail fan. So since the larvae are not particularly capable swimmers, much of their movement is controlled by wind and water currents. So all stages of lobsters grow by molting, a process in which the old hard shell is cast off and completely replaced with a new one. So in the post-larval stage, the lobster settles to the bottom of the ocean and finds shelter. So young lobsters prefer an inshore habitat of rocks, reefs, or grass beds, remaining hidden there for the first years of life. So at this stage, the lobsters look like a smaller version of an adult lobster. So in early bottom phase, the lobster are mostly sheltered, restricted. So although they have developed the ability to move their tail effectively, their overall movement is limited. So as they grow larger, they begin to move outside the burrows to dig for to dig their food. So lobsters reach adulthood within 5 to 7 years depending on water temperature. So they spend most of their time alone in their shelters. So adult lobsters are most active after sunset, when they leave their shelter in search of food. So the lifespan. Lobsters have a fairly long lifespan, with scientists estimating the lobsters can live for as long as 40 to 50 years in the wild. So lobsters continue to grow throughout their life and go through molts. So reproduction. So these creatures cannot reproduce until after the female molts and her shell is soft. She releases a pheromone which she sheds her shell, and nearby males battle for breeding rights. She will lay anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 eggs, most of which will be eaten by predators. So, lobsters reproduce sexually. When lobsters mate, the eggs are not fertilized right away. The female carries the male sperm and chooses when to fertilize her eggs. So lobsters reproduce by laying lobster's eggs. The eggs are carried by the female until they're ready to hatch. So kakuyaw ba aning lobster oy? Ecological importance. Lobsters are the focus of valuable fisheries worldwide. They are often regional icons, and mainly because of this are among the most researched animals on Earth. So as mid-trophic level consumers, lobsters function in the transfer of energy and materials from primary producers and primary consumers to apex predators. Status and trends. So lobsters farming is a new industry and to date is only established in any substantial way in Vietnam and in Indonesia. Although hatchery technology for lobsters have been mooted for commercial production for some time, there is a yet no hatchery supply available. Consequently, the industry is based on the natural availability of lobsters, said. So in Vietnam, the seed resource appears to be fully exploited and provides a catch of 2 to 3 million lobsters seeds per year. In Indonesia, the spiny lobsters farming industry is much smaller but exists so far only on the island of Lombok, where a natural seed resource has similarly exploited. So market and trade. Lobsters farming benefits is in fact driven by strong and increasing market demand. Unsatisfied demand exists worldwide. However, the strongest demand and highest prices are in China. In particular, the Chinese seek P. ornatus for celebration dining. This species is unique in meeting the specification they prefer for sashimi or uncooked. Lobsters serve whole as a centerpiece for banquet dining. So Pihumorose is preferred by the Chinese and Taiwanese markets at a size of 1,000 to 100 to 300 grams. So this species may be served as sashimi but more commonly is soup. So kaning kaning Pihumorose o kaning mm, P. ornatus is species ni sila sa spiny lobsters. So threats. The main threats to lobsters population are overfishing and environmental change. Source. So one little prayer can change one huge situation. Today's new day, carry on and pray. Thank you for listening.